welcome to another episode of the Grow You podcast. We are the Nest Network, and man, we've been having some phenomenal conversation. First off, to anybody that's watching, have Father's Day. If you catch us on a replay, happy belated Father's Day.
Happy
That's it.
Father's Day for sure.
You notice we just have three of the fellas on today. That's kind of by design. We're going to chop it up a little bit today, talking about Father's Day and legacy and how these things tie into your calling. I am Derek Seymour, one of your members here. I'm hailing out of Jacksonville, Florida. Also, we have Arsenio Bottle Dodson coming out of Chi-Town, Chicago, Illinois, and Adonis, H-Town represent. You better know it, Houston, Texas, all day. Fellas, how y'all been doing?
I'm excellent, man. I think this for me, I think it's dope. I just realized this. We have a new father, relatively new father, in Adonis. We have a multi-dad. I have a multitude of children. I'm right in the middle. I'm seasoned, but I also have new little ones too.
Now, when you say multitude,
yeah, it's plenty of them. Yes, isn't that we almost double digits?
Father Abraham had many sons.
Almost double digits. You're talking about godchildren, we in the double digits.
Right. Man.
Yeah, some people that be fruitful and multiply, and they just run with it.
Yeah, I took it serious. I listen. I'm coachable.
Yeah.
I'm coachable. Yeah. Right. And then we got Derek, who's I think
the spread
is 30.
It'll be 30. It'll be 30 here soon. Yeah. And my youngest is 14.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say is I think this is the best Father's Day so far. And I think I'm going to keep having better Father's Day. And if you guys notice, if you've seen me on this live stream before, I'm always in a hoodie. But today I decided to wear my HBCU dad TU Tuskegee University shirt from
come through Tuskegee.
Okay. Yeah. And so this is the best Father's Day. Why? I'm glad you asked. I have all my children here, all but one, and we just been spending the whole weekend together just doing stuff. And we normally do that, but it just seems special now that it's around Father's Day. We played basketball for 4.5 hours yesterday. And if you're not used to playing basketball, it does something to your body that you're not really anticipating. That's me. I'm not used to playing basketball. I created a makeshift basketball rim in the backyard, just doing something creative with the kids, and they loved it. Couldn't get them inside, couldn't get them on a computer or a tablet or anything like that, or a game. So it was an amazing experience. And right after, my wife said, "Hey, you got an appointment this is Orleans, a suburb of Chicago, and it just so happened to be a full body massage. Come through."
What?
Hey,
yes.
If you didn't have that massage, you'd be walking like you got kids today.
I was walking like that into the place, but when I came out, I felt like a new man. Steam shower was amazing.
Might be doing a podcast from the prone position.
Right. I feel like this. And then today, my dad asked me this morning, my father asked me if I can cook for him. So I'll be on the grill. As soon as we off this live stream, I'll be getting on the grill and cooking for the family, everybody coming over. It's just amazing, man. Blessed.
That's what's up. What about you, Derek? What you got going on today?
Man, we're resting. We just flew in this morning. We did a little Texas, Arizona trip, and we left Phoenix, Arizona. We flew out of there at 10, almost 11 o'clock p.m. their time, so about midnight East Coast time. And we were flying all throughout the night. We touched down in Jacksonville about 9:30, 9:45 this morning. So short of a little cat nap, I'm on a downhill slide from that. But man, we had a phenomenal time, man. We did the Grand Canyon. Cactus are a real thing. They're not the little cute things you see here on the East Coast. They're like they might be about to roll up on you. They're they're massive. So yeah, it was just a great trip. My son and I walked maybe about a third of the way down on the trail. And just to have that time with him, to take in that majestic sight and just talk with him kind of one-on-one, which, he's at that age, he doesn't necessarily want to talk to dad all the time. So being able to talk to him and just kind of spend that time out in nature and just again, taking all that scenery, it was pretty impressive. And I want them to know, man, there's a bigger world than just where you live. You know, it's important to
How do
travel,
you think that was?
exposed to some things.
How do you think that was for him being a current Boy Scout? I know when I was in Boy Scouts, anytime we had the opportunity to travel to, the outdoors and get out, walk, camp, things of that nature, it just hit a little different when I was able to do that with my father because he was our troop leader.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just all of those skills come into play. You are not just out there walking, you're being safety conscious, you're taking in
Mhm.
nature, you're paying attention to plants, you're paying attention to animals. I mean, all of these things are what we're getting into because, again, like you said, being a part of scouts just makes you more aware of that. And to do that outside of it being a troop event and being a family event, yeah, special.
I'm just imagining me having my boys, just the twins alone. They 4 years old. They about to be 5 actually on the 24th.
Nice.
Birthday coming up. Just imagining having them out on a trail like that.
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You gotta
Now
No guardrail, no nets.
you
no,
got to come back with them, Bottle. You got to come back with them.
exactly. That's the thing.
Or don't
That's
come back at all.
right. If they fall over, I'm just gonna have to jump because, and then I can just imagine one of them picking up a plant and just eating it. Like I can see that happening, and we don't know what these plants are. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have to have your son go with us so he can educate us and protect us.
Right. What about you, AD? Anything special going on this today?
Man, so you see, my background is a little different. I am not in the office. I am currently with my in-laws. They set up lunch. They know your boy loves tacos. So we got a whole taco spread out there right now. This morning,
You didn't cook it
we
yourself? You didn't have to cook?
mm,
Wow.
Wow.
we
AD,
pulled
AD
up.
cook.
Well, I guess down. We pulled up and everything was already prepared. My wonderful mother-in-law took care of it, and we were sitting down for maybe about 5-10 minutes. It's okay, it's time to eat. I was like, well, I got enough time to get me something to eat before we hop on this podcast. So let me get me a plate.
Love
This
that about
morning,
you.
just spent time with my son, watched some movies. I had breakfast in bed. Shout out to the wife for making breakfast in bed this morning, and yeah, that was it for us.
Come on,
Real
breakfast,
peaceful.
man.
Good
Wow.
stuff. Man, well let's kind of jump into it. So as we were kind of pre-show chopping it up, we're got into this idea of Father's Day and what does that mean? And really this idea of living out your calling in the light of building legacy. Now, legacy, we kind of always run to family with that, but legacy may be in your community, it could be wherever. But let's chop it up a little bit about that. So let's just start with kind of what does that word mean to you? When you hear the word legacy, what comes to mind?
For me, legacy is what you leave behind. And it might not necessarily be what you leave behind because you can still be here for legacy to
Mhm.
exist or legacy to
Yeah.
happen. But legacy is the impact that you left on a significant group of people or a specific group of people that follow you, so to speak, so that you impact their life in a particular way.
Yeah, I
Cool.
agree with Arsenio 100%. Legacy. I think a lot of times when we hear the word, we always think of like a monetary, like an inheritance, or something that is literally left behind so that it will improve the generation that is coming. While all those things are great, leave me an inheritance. Thank you. I also think that there are other impacts that can be left, or seeds that are planted in the next generation that can do so much more than leaving a check for someone. You know, teaching principles such as character, integrity, um, stewardship, you name it. All of those things are important, and I think that from a legacy standpoint, we do ourselves a disservice when we do not set up the next generation with those principles. So I agree 100%. Yeah, the impact is one of the things that is most important to me when it comes to legacy.
You know what? Um, I think it's potentially even more dangerous than that because not just a disservice, we could actually do damage if all we leave is money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh
If
yeah.
all we leave somebody just a pile of money, but no character, no vision, no drive to go with those resources, you could actually put them in a much worse position because they don't even understand, you know, how to really navigate that. I love when I hear stories about Warren Buffett and him making all of his
Mm-hmm.
kids run nonprofits and
Mhm.
things like that. Like, yeah, we got the billions, however, comma, when you see a son out there like driving a plow because he's farming, it's like, he might have did something right.
Yeah, I think that those actual morals, values, and principles are way more important than the money. As a matter of fact, with those principles or morals and values instilled, you can produce money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the money. It's less than likely that you're going to develop some principles, morals, values, and things like that. And so, while both are great, if we had to choose, if I had to choose, it would be a kind person, be a man or woman of your word, treat people the golden rule. So I would instill those things, which I actively am doing, instilling those things in my children in
And I think
some money.
And I think the different sayings that we've heard about money ring true even with this conversation because when you acquire a large amount of money or you just get more money, it really just amplifies who you already are. So if you're someone who is lacking character, you now just have more resources to show that you lack character. If you are someone who does not have integrity, you just now have more access to resources that will just
To
firm
display your integrity.
that you,
Right.
exactly, exactly.
Let's say uh, that money changed them. No, it's just allowed them to be able to afford to be who they really were. They
Right.
Yeah.
were always mean,
Yeah.
but now they're mean with means, right?
Hmm.
So
Mean with means.
right. So now
That's
that they
good.
don't need you, will the real you please stand up? And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these cases. Money is an amplifier, so that you're dead on with that. Something I've said repeatedly, being an educator, being in a room with kids, or exercise I would do with kids. I would just start with one kid and I go all the way around the room and I'd ask every kid the same question with the caveat that if their answer was I don't know, that was okay. And you might probably have heard me tell the story before, but I'll share it again here. I would ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we go all around the room, lawyer, doctor, fireman. I don't know. You get a bunch of that because they're teenagers. But I get all the way around to the end of the room and I come back and say, let me repeat the question I asked. My question is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Why did everybody give me an occupation? Those who chose to answer.
Mm,
Nobody said when I grow up, what I want to be is kind. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good wife. I want to be respected. I want to, because a lot of our systems, especially when we're talking to kids, definitely in an educational setting, we're just talking about getting knowledge so you can get a skill so you can go make money. And I think we've lost many people. I almost say kids. I think we've lost many people with that incomplete message. And I'm saying I'm not telling you money's bad. I promise you, if
It's not.
you got some
It's not bad.
extra that you just want to, slide Mr. Seymour way, go for it. But we can't just stop there. Be a lawyer, but be an ethical lawyer.
Hmm.
Know what I'm saying?
I think that's where it's a common misconception. I believe it's a misconception when people say it starts at home. People be like, well, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to teach math. I'm not a science. I don't know how to teach science. That's not what that means. It's the things that are instilled at home, like these ethics, integrity, and things like that, that will allow for your student to behave a certain way, your child to behave a certain way as a student, or as a lawyer, or as a police officer, or as a father, or all these different things, all these different titles that are dawned upon us as we go through life. It starts at home, what they're taught as children, that's going to allow for them to shine in these different fields, or the opposite of shine.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned that a lot of parents will have the position that it's not my responsibility or not my job to do that. And I would argue that it is because even if you don't know how to teach someone, long division or the Pythagorean theory or theory of relativity or breaking down one of Aesop's fables, regardless of what you are learning in school, your parents are modeling a particular role in your life, whether they know it or not. The real question is, what is that role that they are modeling? Are they like if you're someone who's had a father or a father figure in your life, are they modeling what it looks like to be a man of character? Are they modeling what it looks like to have integrity, to tell the truth, to be
Right.
able to be a good steward of your finances,
To
to
be
be
able
able to
to
protect,
apologize when you
to
deem
be
wrong.
Mm,
able to
what?
apologize. That is a big one. To
Need
say
examples of that.
I made a mistake, I was
I
wrong.
messed up.
Right. And if you're a child who is not in an environment where they are learning those things, then you are only going to grow into a man who is most likely negligible in those areas simply because they're ignorant and they haven't been exposed to that level of character, integrity, truth telling, accountability, you name it. And it all starts with that father figure in the household.
And
Absolutely.
I actually heard somebody talk about that earlier, that when we moved away from the latchkey kids, all the things we felt compelled
What's
to
the
do.
last kid? Not for me, but for the
Yeah, yeah,
listeners.
yeah, yeah.
For
Yeah,
the listeners, because they
for the
might
one
not know.
person who doesn't
This
know.
this is for y'all. This is not for our
Yeah,
senior. This is for
yeah,
y'all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that kid that because parents were working, maybe they're both working on a single parent home, and the kid got home early, they had their own key, so they had to let themselves in and out of the house because there was nobody there to greet them,
Hmm.
which is different. There was a time when you got home, mom was waiting, maybe auntie, whoever, you had somebody, an adult there waiting to bring you home, get you a snack, make sure everything got going. And we slid to this society where kids basically were left to kind of raise themselves.
Mm.
Talked about, most dangerous time for a kid is between 4 to 6, 4 to 7,
And that
because
was that was a time when I was at home by myself
right,
between
At
four to
4 to 6,
six.
yeah,
Hmm.
from
Oh, well, really from 3 to 6 growing up. When we lived in Dallas, in
3
elementary
p.m. to
school.
6 p.m. to be clear.
Mhm. Yeah,
tell me something. I mean, tell the listener something.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
the
yeah.
listeners was thinking that you were talking about age. I'm
Not
like,
age. We're talking about the
I mean,
time
the
of
listener
day.
was like,
yeah.
wow, that is wild.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so I remember vividly in elementary school from my fourth grade up until my sixth grade year. I was walking home from school by myself, riding my bike home from school, and to Derek's point, I was that latchkey kid. I would get home, mom was at work, dad was at work, I had my own key. I would get home, cartoons would be on, daytime TV, you name it. I had the house to myself. My younger brothers were at daycare, and they normally would not come home until parents got off, picked up the younger siblings, and then they made it home around 6:30. So the responsibility was to, of course, monitor and really take care of myself for those 2 to 3 hours Monday through Friday.
Wow. Think
So,
that made
so
you more mature, or how do you think that impacted you?
that's where I was going.
Well, I found out about a lot of shows that I thought were brand new, but they weren't. I remember vividly calling my mama at work because I was that kid. I was last kid, but I would always call my parents while they was at work. Um,
Mandatory.
no, just for like little stuff, not
No,
to
for
check
me, it was
in. Yeah.
mandatory.
It was they didn't want me to call. They they wanted me to stop calling because I would call for little stuff.
You calling from
Like like the casual conversations you would have with your child at home, I would call work and have those same questions. Where did you put the this, or where's the remote, or where I got to call. So I came home one day. My routine was pretty simple. I would come home, I'd make me a little afternoon snack, uh, watch my cartoons, and then switch it right over to daytime TV. Well, Thundercats was off, so got through that. Dragon Ball Z was off, got through that. And then I switched over to daytime, and this show popped on that I had never heard before.
Uh-oh.
Nice little intro, and then I see a bunch of black people on this show. I said, "Well, I wonder if my mama knows about this show." So I pick up the phone and I call. I say, "Hey, mom, there's this new show that's on TV. It's like set in like the '60s or '70s. hilarious. Have you ever heard of it? He said, what's the name of it? I said, it's called Good Times. This is a great show. This is wonderful. I remember vividly doing that. He's like, no, Adonis, this is not a new show. That's called reruns. That's what those are. Stop calling me at work. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I wasn't a latchkey kid at all. Whatever. I don't know the title it was too many of us for me to be latchkey, because it was always somebody in the house, like uncles, aunties, cousins. A cousin that I didn't notice as a kid, they dropped out, so they was always at home. So they was at yeah. So we couldn't be latchkey. As a matter of fact, we were the opposite. It was like the door was just open. The door was open. You had to have a key.
Yeah, the open door policy at your house. Come on in.
Yeah, somebody was always home. Morning, noon, night, middle of the night. Somebody was always there. A lot of activity.
So let me spin this back around, because I want to come back to a word Adonis said. He said, teaching kids accountability. In our more modern society of apps that track kids' locations and cameras in the house that monitor and all of these things, have we robbed kids of the ability to develop some type of accountability?
I don't think so.
For the sake of creating safety.
No, I don't think we have, because even within that, there's still a space for the child to communicate if there's a situation to where they're doing something that they shouldn't be. Because I think that's also a piece of accountability. So like we have, security systems in our house. My wife and I, we both share our locations on our phones. And then when our children are old enough to have their cell phones, that will also be a requirement, not only for safety purposes, but if you're going out to the high school dance or whatever, and my expectation is for you to be home at a certain time, and I check your location and you're not at the dance and you're not home, and you didn't communicate that with me, well, there's a lapse in not only communication, but you're not being accountable to what you said you were going to do or what we agreed upon. So I think there's still a piece of accountability there, but that also has to deal with the expectation that is set by the parent to the child. With my household, I knew growing up that my parents were not as strict as the other parents that I knew in the neighborhood or even in the schools. As long as I communicated with my parents what was going on, I didn't really have a curfew in high school. Now, I also wasn't out 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I had to be at church the next morning anyway. So I was typically home in a reasonable time frame. But it was also expected that I communicate if I was going to be out past that reasonable hour, or if I was going to be spending the night at a friend's house, like all of those things. But again, they expected me and held me accountable to that because they set the expectation.
Yeah, for my children now. So I'll share how it was for me briefly, and then share what the purpose of I have all of these different things that give us their location is for us in our household. So for me, me and my mom, she was one of those moms that was strict, stern, put the fear of God in me, but also very, 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 very cool. Like what a child would consider a cool parent to be. Like very understand. I was able to kick it, chill, be out late, as long as I communicated. Like I was like, hey, I'm at the twins' house. And it was cool. But for us, I think that the location finders and all of that stuff is for safety. This is a different world. Our children are growing up in a far different world than what we grew up in. Like I can get on the bus or get on the train and go to my friend's house and be cool. One of my guys or homies had a car. He'd come grab me and we can go somewhere. Now, I'm not the parent who is ruled by fear. I'm like my mom, super cool. But it's a difference between being afraid and just having good sense. Like you want to know where your children are. So the parameters are, I can see your location. I know where you are, but the responsibility is, the accountability is you call and say, hey, I made it to my destination. This is where I am. This is who I'm with. This is what we're doing. That's the responsibility. I'm on my way home. I made it home. That type of communication.
So let me ask this question. We're talking about what you're instilling in your kids, what you're creating inside of them. Where's that balance between creating fear and creating independence? Especially in light of all the stuff that's going on, in the world. The world can be crazy sometimes, but again, how do you make sure that they're being cautious but not paranoid?
Well, I think first we have to identify, like when we say having a fear of your parents or a fear of your father, or, just a fear of the individual who is setting the expectation. I think that so many people can misconstrue that. And it's not a fear like of their physical presence or like fear of, them being physically abusive towards me. Even though in some instances, if your father is, 6'6", 290 pounds, you can definitely be fearful of their physical presence because I mean it's a big dude. But when we are talking about this conversation, I really think it's the fear of disappointing your parents, the fear of something bad happening, like the fear of that in a sense. There is a healthy respect that comes with fear because some of us are afraid of, guns in a sense because we respect what a gun can do. Some people are afraid of certain animals because they have seen what those animals are capable of doing. So with children having a fear for our parent, I think it has to again with the respect that comes with that parent. Like I know that my parent can do these things or would do these things if I were to disappoint, lie, all those other things from a disciplinary standpoint. So that's one context we have to look at that in. And then second, when it comes to when we're once we've identified the fear, then we have to transition from an accountability standpoint as the parent. Okay, I've I heard this on Instagram from a parent who was deemed as tyrannical, who it has a religious undertone to it. So some people view me as tyrannical because I expect my child to listen to me after the first time. We don't do the back and forth. We don't do the I'm gonna say it again. If I say 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is 2. I expect for you to go with that. And the reason that that parent had that mindset is because I also expect that once my child grows and matures and goes and leads their own life, that they will then have the same respect for God when God has told them once. And that respect or fear comes from, okay, there's also a level of trust that goes into that as well. So if our parents are telling, to Bob's point, hey, if you're gonna stay out, great, communicate. And I shouldn't have to call you and ask you where you are. Because if I do, you now there's a blemish in the trust that I have for you. There's a blemish in this relationship that we were cultivating and developing. And now I can't necessarily trust you to go out with these people because you're more focused on enjoying your time with them than you are with keeping the agreement that we had. So I think those components are very important when we're talking about parenting and then really setting those boundaries.
So this is where it gets good, man, because where I think I've seen parents miss the mark, and I'm not by any means speaking from the position of being the perfect parent, but with parents that I've seen miss the mark is they don't have the intentionality to recognize that I need to build all those components. I need to build healthy fear, but I also need to build trust. I also need to build love. I also need to build good communication, just all of those things. What happens is when you're just parenting from emotions and feelings and you're just popping off in the moment, you miss those opportunities to build up those good elements too.
Yeah.
To take it back to educational space, we talk about, a good teacher needs to have what we call this 3-to-1 ratio. For every one negative interaction with the kid, you need to have had 3 positive ones. Because they're kids, those negative moments of correction, it's not even anger, but you may need to correct them or just redirect them, whatever. they're going to be more likely to listen to you and go with that 1+1 is 2 because you've had those 3 good interactions.
Yeah.
And if it's a difficult relationship with a child, that needs to jump to 10-1.
Mm-hmm.
You need to overcompensate. You need to pour in so much positive. And the whole example is a bank account. You can't keep withdrawing when you ain't made no deposits.
That's right.
You're gonna get hit with that non-sufficient funds fee. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And parents don't, and I'm not even gonna say parents, I'm gonna say people don't get that. When their
No,
kids
stick with
open
the parents.
yeah.
Stick with the parents. Says his father. Because I think a lot of times the relationship for trust is a two-way street. And I think a lot of times as parents, we make the mistake as viewing trust as a one-way street. Like you are my child. You should trust the things like I should be able to trust you to do what I ask you to do. But then we don't look at this as okay, well, the child is growing and developing. They have questions and they want to feel as if this is a safe space where they can also trust you. And then again, as a parent, we're like, well, what? I'm the parent.
Why
Like that's
wouldn't
the
you?
mindset. Why wouldn't you trust me? Right. That's the mindset that we have. But again, it's like, okay, well, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just I would like to be able to ask these questions or kind of push the envelope in a sense, not to buck the system, but like, okay, let me question this. Let me ask these things. Let me do this because I want to develop this sense of trust. And I think that, especially with the generation before us, that was really the mindset. Like, do as I say, not as I do. If I
Right.
ask you to do something, do it. Don't ask me no questions. This is what it is. And it was really difficult in that type of environment to develop trust because it's more of a dictatorship. And who trusts the dictator?
Nobody.
Right,
It's fear. It's not trust.
right.
And trust is a more powerful influence than
Hmm.
fear. Because the moment you get a chance to not follow the rules, you will. The moment you feel like there's a space where I don't have to do what I'm
And it's
doing
gonna feel
with
so
fear,
good.
you
Oh, it's gonna feel
will.
so good.
But
It
when it's
feels so
trust, and, the,
Right.
and that's true, that feeling is great. But an even greater
good. Hmm.
feeling is that empowered feeling that I'm doing this out of respect. I'm doing this
Yeah.
because I trust. Like I'm
Right.
I'm checking in, even though my homie's my guy. They ain't got to check in. They
Hmm.
don't have to call it. I'm checking in out of respect. That feeling is way more gratifying.
Well, it's not just us instilling in a child the ability to trust their parent. You're also trying to create within them an ability to trust themselves and their own judgment.
Yep.
And what happens is we can unintentionally create limiting, right, based on fear, based on something my mama told me. I'm creating these limiting beliefs in my own kids, and we can't do that. Like, what a kid
Or
needs to know
not
is
even
what
the
are the
mama
edges of
told
the
me.
sandbox. Yeah,
Not even the my mama told me. Like this is what mama did.
right.
Like y'all remember the story that Byron, shout out to Byron for my big U fan,
Hmm.
that he used to tell with the family member that would always cook the greens in this one pot, right?
Right.
And everybody would always ask, why you put it in this pot? Well, that's what mama did. Well, you can use a bigger pot because the turkey neck that she's trying to put in there ain't gonna fit. Well, I just didn't do it like that because that's what I saw. That's what like so it's not just of what mama said, it's what mama did.
Without even necessarily knowing why they did it,
Not
what
Hmm.
their
without.
motives
And the only
were.
reason they did it because that's the only thing that was clean or available at the time.
Right, right, right.
Right.
And I think as the story goes, is really what they were buying was too big, so they were just cutting the end of it off so it would fit in their smaller pan because that's all they had.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's like that's what it was like. Why are you cutting off that piece and throwing it away? Because you're supposed to cut that piece off and throw it away.
No, you're
No,
not.
she was cutting that piece off and throwing it away because it was too big to fit in the pan.
Right.
But
Right.
nobody knew that version of the story.
Exactly. Yeah, no,
Right,
that is
right, right.
powerful. Y'all notice that most of our stories are mama stories here on Father's Day. Nothing wrong
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
that. But it's always a mama story. Mamas always get the glow. Even
Yeah.
on Father's Day,
Right,
mamas.
right, right.
There's
So
nothing.
that's a good point to make a pivot,
Yeah.
bottle. So I'll just pose this question, and we can kind of all just dive into it since we're really just really talking about legacy. What was the relationship like between you and your father?
Mm.
Before we go into the relationship, with the father. I got a cool Father's Day story. My life is like a movie. Like I could be a TV
It
show.
really is. It really is.
I could be a TV show, a sitcom, or something. Earlier today, and it started yesterday when we was outside playing basketball. Like my older son that's here, he was telling the little kids like, "Why y'all always tricking?" Or they use snitching. Why y'all always snitching on each other? Like, why y'all always telling? Because Zion or one of the other kids was like, "Daddy, Zion did this or Trey did this," and this morning it happened again. And I was around to witness it, and I had to sit down. Talk. They was all sitting around the table eating breakfast, and I was telling them like, "Hey, this is your brother. This is how I was raised. This is your brother. Like, your brother needs to trust you. Like, he needs to be okay with being himself around you. Even if he switch up when mom and daddy walk into the room, he need to be okay being him around you. Like, there's probably not another relationship until you get into an adulthood that's going to be closer than you and your brother. So it's okay if it's okay for you not to tell me when he has his phone at the table, because that's what he was saying. Daddy, now he ain't got his phone at the table while he eating, which is one of the rules in our house. Like, while we at this table, no phones, no devices. And so I think he was just telling because he wanted to have his tablet at the table. But I let him know it's okay for you not to tell stuff like that. If it's something that's going to harm him, harm you, or harm somebody else, that's when you let me know. That's when you bring me, get me involved, because I'm about to sit down at the table and eat with you. So I'm going to see him with his phone and I'm going to tell him to put it up. So you don't have to tell me these small, minuscule things. Like, that's going to break the trust between you and your brother. Now y'all in the real world, out there in the world, and it's y'all against the world. He needs to know that you got his back and he has your back. And so that was just I feel like that was might have been scripted in the TV show just to have that conversation. But back to the original question that you asked, AD, my relationship with my dad, I have two memories of my father prior to him coming home, prior to him being away, because we visit him a lot while he was locked up. So my dad was slapped with a career criminal tag from a judge. And I didn't know that you see the same judge every time you go. I've never been to court or criminal cases or anything like that. So I didn't know every time you mess up, you see the same judge. I didn't know that. That's how it worked. This judge saw my dad one too many times, slapped him with a career tag. He did 18 years, his last visit to prison. He did 18 years. Prior to that, I have two memories. Graduated out of kindergarten. He took me to McDonald's and got me a Big Mac. That and him coming to the house like one time when he was home. So he went away several times. One time when he was home, my mom said, "Don't let her and her friends went out, left the kids at the house by herself. Don't let nobody in this house. Y'all better clean this house. Don't let nobody in." She must have knew he was gonna come. But this was my daddy. So show certain, he knock on the door, knock on the window, trying to get in. I'm like, who is that? Nobody else is going. They all older than me. And nobody else is going to the door to see who it is. It's me. I look out the window. That's my daddy. I let him in. He come in, interact, play, everything good. And he go, I don't know how she knew he had been there, but mamas be knowing.
And just like one of your sons told, probably one of your brothers said,
probably like, my daddy was here and he did it, and they told. And so I got one of the greatest whoopings of my life, and I learned that anything could have happened. He could have had ill intent. Anything could have happened. At least that's what she told me. But yeah, my relationship with my dad was very, very strained, only because he wasn't there all the time. When I was older and I started to have my own family, I know the legacy that I'm creating. So we would go and visit him all the time. Now he's home, and I just texted him this morning, like, bro, I tell all my friends about you. Like, I'm so glad that you didn't give up on yourself. I'm so glad that you didn't give up on us, or think that this man came home 4 years ago, remarried my mom, started a business, and now he has my older brother and my youngest brother, my oldest brother and my youngest brother in a coaching program to now they're licensed. They just graduated out of the program. Like, now we super close. But growing up, it was very, very strange. He was never there.
Wow. Yeah, my dad, I grew up with my dad, both my parents in the home, but my dad was like that old school dad that was kind of like you don't really show emotions, you don't really show affection like that. And it's like, I put food in the refrigerator, didn't I? You know,
Mhm.
that was kind of my dad. My mom was really
Emotions.
What's that?
So why we need emotions? You
Yeah,
eat.
what's
Your
that?
belly
Yeah,
full,
yeah,
like
right.
Denzel on that
You're eating,
movie.
right? Right. You know,
What law is it? I say I got to like it.
Right.
right, right, right. My dad's in his 70s now, and it's as he's gotten older, he's softened ish up a little bit, right? But that's still pretty much just his makeup. The guys that he runs with, the guys that he works with, that's just how they were. This is a much different style of parenting. It was like the kids were for the wife to take care of, kind of a deal. That maybe flew back then. Who knows what good or bad came from that. What I know now is I can't parent that way now in 2023.
Yeah.
What I need to prepare my son for, my 14-year-old, is a whole lot different than what my dad was trying to do with me,
Oh, definitely.
decades ago. So now I tell people, and I've said it to him, and I'm pretty honest, some of the lessons I learned from that is what not to do. 'Cause based on who I felt like I wanted to be and the man I was being called to become, when you don't see those examples, you start looking elsewhere. I was that kid. I took a lot of cues from television. I'm not gonna lie. Like what did Mr. Brady say?
And
So
imagine the degree of influence these children have now today.
right,
Like you were limited back then.
right, right,
Mhm.
and that's such an excellent point. Not only was I limited to the amount of other influence, the influence I was getting was so tightly scripted because of where the mindset of the world was. Them TV dads was TV dads. You had Mr. Rogers, you had, what was going on with Fat Albert and the Cosby. Like you had very narrow vision of what this was look like.
And it
And a
was
lot of
scripted. Like you
it
said,
was
like it was
scripted.
written.
It was scripted, and it was to model these certain things. Now we all over the place, man.
Oh
And
yeah.
and now the dads are just, they're not the wise person leading the family. They're played for the fool more often than not in popular media. I mean, think about it. We went through a time when the most wholesome mom on television was Marge Simpson. Think about that.
That's scary.
That is scary. But that's the influence. So as a dad who has to fight, I think, even harder now to counteract all these other influences. And it's not, our influences went off at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and you got the
Static.
national anthem. And so, right now it's 24/7 nonstop in the palm of their hand, something trying to pull them away from what you're trying to put in them, the legacy you're trying to instill in them.
Unless you put systems in place to mitigate it, like to stop it, to cut it off, like phones on this counter, on this server at this amount at this time. So now at least you have a buffer, you have a space. Because if you let them, they'll be on the phone all night, even when they know they need to be asleep. And even though they know they need rest, or even though they shouldn't be doing it, I shouldn't be going on this site, I shouldn't be talking to this person, I shouldn't be having this conversation, they still will do it because they're human. And I think that's where a lot of parents drop the ball. Like, if put myself in that situation, if I had the access that these children have, not that I'm that old, but I still didn't have access to what they have access to. And if I did, I probably would have taken advantage of it just from pure curiosity, just from it being shiny, just knowing my personality. And so that's why I was blessed to not be born during this time, but I was also blessed to have good innate morals and principles, even if it wasn't poured into me by a father or a mother or whoever was raising me. Like my mom did a phenomenal job, I believe, but it's just something that was in me that I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to do bad things. I had so many examples around me that I didn't want to be like my dad, all my uncles, my oldest brother, my cousins, all of the males prior to me made these same decisions. It don't make sense for me to make this decision. Maybe I should try making the opposite decision. And so that's why I ordered my steps a lot of the way. Did I still make bad decisions? Absolutely. But now with the information that I gathered prior to me, and while I made those bad decisions, now my 7 boys, if they decide to make those bad decisions, it's purely a choice. It's purely a decision because they have the roadmap or the blueprint.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead, Eddie.
so for me, the relationship with my father is very complex and complicated. Um, my mother and father got married when I was 9. I want to say 8, 9 years old. Um, and so he was in, out, in, out. Their relationship was on, off, on, off. But there were pockets throughout my rearing where I could say, from my experience, he was a great father. Like I mentioned earlier, he was the troop leader for my Boy Scouts team. He was very active being at school when I was going through elementary. Middle school, he was at every middle school football game, every middle school event, because I was in all types of clubs. I was in chess clubs, home economics,
Sounds
technology
like a
student
great dad.
associates. Right. So from that, within that pocket, 100%. And I think the challenge with our relationship started once puberty shifted for me, because I think because of the relationship that he had with his father, he felt that he had to assert himself in certain ways that he didn't need to for with my personality. Anybody who knows me, I'm not a confrontational person. If I need to throw hands, we can, but that's not what I'm leading with. I'm not the aggressor when it comes to a lot of stuff. I'm not a mischievous person when it comes to being my childhood either. So through high school, it was very turbulent. And when going to college, it only amplified the strain of our relationship even more. Um, my mother passed away in 2017 from cancer, and from that time frame, 2017 up until his passing in 2021, we probably shared a handful of conversations on the phone, you name it. So there are a lot of good things and good life lessons that he taught me, my younger brothers as well as my sisters. But there are also a lot of pockets or areas where there was definitely some improvement. And it wasn't until we had a heart to heart where the light bulb went off for me, because he expressed, um, again, the relationship that he had with his father. He's like, when the parallels that he made was when he dropped me off at college versus when his father dropped him off at college. He was like, my dad didn't take me to school. I graduated from high school, and he said, "Go figure it out." He said, I took you to school. I dropped you off, made sure everything was. I was like, "Yeah, that's what he's supposed to do." But as we continue to converse and have that conversation, I realized, okay, you believe that because you took an additional step where your father may not have taken that step, that um, you are in a sense a better father. And there were some things going on during that time frame where I was like, this is not what you are displaying. I just want to show you that with these different examples. Bringing that tension to light really did some maturing for myself. But again, it just was a complicated relationship. So he's since passed 2021 from cancer, and I've inherited a phenomenal father-in-law. Um, so that's the relationship between my father and I.
That's good, man. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing, fellas. I know we're wrapping up really shortly. This is an extended Father's Day edition. I do have a question though. How has your upbringing impacted your parenting, the way that you father? How
Ooh,
I know this is a
you
packed.
said we're gonna wrap it up.
I know, but I
This
want to know, and I think the people will benefit from hearing the information, and that's what we're doing this for the people. So, how has your upbringing impacted the way that you parent, the way that you are a father?
For me, I think whenever possible, the idea of presence is important, and I've increasingly learned that more. Um, and I'm not just physical presence, but the emotional, mental, spiritual presence of really intentionally pouring into your child, not just being there from a reactionary standpoint, but like catching those cues when they say things or do certain little things, and allowing those to be little teachable moments, or sometimes even manufacturing little teachable moments because I need to get this lesson in right here, right? I think when you're again not being intentional, you sit back and you kind of let the child's rearing kind of just happen. They're almost a feral child. They're just kind of going through life and whatever happens. And I don't think we can necessarily afford to do that anymore. We have to be so intentional in guiding. So I'm very intentional about certain things. We talked about, my 14-year-old and him with the drones. It's like when I started popping, I'm looking at things. I'm looking ahead to what are the programs, what are
Drone photography.
drone photography, right? He may come back and be like, I'm not interested. Okay, but it's not going to fall flat because I didn't do my due diligence, right? Like if he said skateboarding, I would be like reading all the Tony Hawk stuff. I'd be whatever that thing is. We got to be prepared.
And we better see you on a skateboard there.
Right, right. With all the pads, I'm gonna have on a forehead pad and a knee pad, all the pads.
He said a forehead pad.
I will have on all the pads. I promise. But my point is, I recognize I'm not in charge of my son's calling. God's in charge of my son's calling. I'm in charge of nurturing, equipping, stretching, teaching. I'm in charge of all of the ingredients that we talk about.
Yeah.
Right. I'm in charge of my nest. I'm in charge of all of the mechanical parts of fostering that within my kid. I'm not the one that's responsible for putting the vision in him or the calling. It's look back, observe, where's he seem to be rolling? Okay, boom. That's where the resources are going to get diverted. Not into my wish list of what I think he should do. Oh, I think he should be a doctor. So I'm going to get, that may not be what he's called for.
Yeah.
So that's been the big difference for me. It's just being more intentional and present in just the day-to-day to make sure he's moving in the right direction.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. You up. I know Max is still very young.
He is, but he don't act like it.
Because his daddy.
Right. And people say I have an old soul, and I see that in my 2-year-old.
Facts.
So one of the things that my wife and I said that we were going to do when we started planning to have a family, we said because we both were raised within fractured families. Her parents got divorced when she was young. My parents were not together when I was young. So we grew up within a certain level of dysfunction.
I think you might be the only person, AD, I'm sorry, that I know that planned their family, planned having their children, and all the people I know.
Yeah. It's word of advice for anybody. If you want to have kids, plan it out. And then number 2, have as many children as you can afford. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about time, energy, resource. If you can afford 5 kids, have 5 kids. If you can only afford to have one, only have one child. Stop.
All right, go ahead.
But yeah, that's your nugget of the day. But one of the things that we said, and we really vowed that we would do this because we saw how our parents at various stages of our lives raised us based out of what they thought we should do. Right. When I tell the story a lot, when I went off to college, my father and my mother wanted me to go into medicine. They wanted me to be an anesthesiologist. So I went pre-med my first year in school. For those who are wondering, I am not in the medical field. I don't work in medicine. It is not what I'm focused on. It's not what I like. But we always said that we wanted to be the parents that our children needed, not the parents that we wanted to be. That sounds weird for some people who just don't get it, and that's okay. You will at some point in time. But we talk about nurturing and all those things. If my son needs me to be there physically and just sit with him and play with him, that's the parent that I need to be. If my son needs me to go to the splash pad and just play with him, and if he grabs my hand as we're running through the sprinklers, he needs me to run with him and to be okay with that. And as he grows up, there's gonna be times where he's going to need me to explain why this girl broke his heart. It's going to be times where he's going to need me to explain why he made the team or didn't make the team or whatever. And my wife as well, we vowed that we would be that parent for our child, because we can pinpoint specific times where we knew we needed as a child, a young adult, an adult, and our parents were not that. And it played a pivotal role in how we interacted with others because of the lack for my parents. So that's the thing that we have vowed.
That's good. I don't know how I ended up. I probably the most long-winded of us. How I end up being the last person to share with them.
Because you're the one that want to extend this Father's Day edition with this question. That's
I got you. I'll be as brief as possible.
We're gonna get fined.
Shout out to the producers for staying with us. Thank you, producers. Y'all are awesome. Bottle asked the question. It wasn't me. It was on Bottle.
I apologize.
Send in the invoice.
I think the people, from what y'all shared already, got tremendous value from it. So I'll be brief, especially since it was my question. So how my upbringing created the parenting style that I have is I'm heavy on trust and respect. Like, first have to understand what trust and respect is, what that means to each person, individual. And we have so many children. For those who don't know, we have 9 children. We have a blended family, 9 of them. So my wife had 3, I had 3, and then we had 3 together once we got married. And so we have 9 children. They range from 23 to 4-year-old twin boys.
Jesus.
Yes.
You stuck the landing with twin boys. Let me just pray about that. Okay, go ahead.
Had to get fancy. I'm a fancy guy, so we had to get
again. Bottle can afford to have that many children.
I can have. We are blessed beyond measure. I promise you. And so, trust and respect is my leading factors. And so we teach morals, principles, values, all of those things, but trust and respect, because you'll get a lot out of a person with trust and respect. You'll get a lot out of me if I know I can trust you and I respect you as an individual, talking about my children, and they'll get a lot. I'll get a lot from them if they know they can trust me and respect me. And so there's some things that my wife, even though this is my partner for the rest of my life, if it's not detrimental to any relationship or anybody's health or safety, there's some things that I know from my children that I don't tell them if they ask me not to, until they're comfortable enough to do it. And so it's a modification of my mom who raised me. My mom, my grandma raised me, my mom's parenting style. So I feel like she was too lenient. Like, I could have been into a lot more as a child or as a young adult, period. I could have been involved in a lot more than what I was. But again, remember what I mentioned earlier, something inside of me just didn't take me down the drug route, the gun route, the violence route. It didn't take me down there because I've seen so much of it in my past from the other men in my life. Trust and respect. So we talk, and I'm in their business. Like, my mom she didn't ask me a lot of questions. I shared a lot because it's who I was. She didn't ask me a lot of questions. I asked so many questions, and they probably get bugged out about it. But this is how I know who you are, your thoughts that you're thinking, and the degree that you'll share is based on the trust and respect you have for me as an individual. And because they share so much, I know that is high. So how I have a child who was born in Chicago, West Side, South Side. He's now 23 years old, strong, young Black male with no record, with no children, which is in that demographic is rare that I can call, that calls me, that we have trust and respect. Whereas in other scenarios, it could have been never answering the phone, never, and that goes from him all the way down to the twins. The twins probably the most open because they don't have any reservations. As a matter of fact, they've come to the door several times during this podcast, even though I told them, hey, I'm doing a podcast, please don't come to the door. They don't care. trust and respect is my parenting style, geared off of a modification of my mom's parenting. But that is it. If Derek, you want to close us out?
I will definitely do that, man. Thank you so much. So good, so good, so good. Man, if this has provided you any value whatsoever, we're asking that you would like, share in the corner or the other corner, because I'm backwards in the video, wherever that corner is. If you hit that subscribe button, we definitely appreciate that. We want to get this message out. So our N.E.S.T. network, that N, again, that's the nurture side. We believe that's important, that you nurture certain things within people if you're going to help them grow. You got to equip them, right? It's one thing to nurture them, but then you actually got to give them some tools, and then you got to stretch people. Growth happens at the stretch point. And then we got to teach, right? We got to get in there. There's an education piece, but at the end of this, we want to be able to just transform all of us to move us to be in, that best and highest version of ourselves. So with that in mind, gentlemen, as we've talked about this, creating legacy and the calling on being a father, and what does that mean to kind of grow our kids, from our N.E.S.T. formula, where would you land?
I would say I'm in all of them, but the stretching, I think, because I challenge my children a lot to do what's not comfortable. The stretching, which is helping them develop the character that I desire to see and that they ultimately will benefit from, but also that they desire to have. Like I know all of their goals. We're a personal development family, so I know all of their goals and their desires, and you will not obtain these things without doing X, Y, and Z. So I think stretch. If that's what you're asking, that's yes. What I was playing. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. 80.
Yeah, stretch is a good one for me as well, but the transformation piece is one that I want to focus on more. The challenge with that is it takes patience, and there are some things, and I think as parents, that is something that we struggle with because we want our kids to get it, and we expect them to get it because we're setting that expectation from our position and not theirs. But when that light bulb does go off, and you see that transformation take place, whether it's potty training or them getting a math problem or them understanding some philosophical theory, you name it. I think that is where I want to really work on my parenting skills, just being able to be patient in that transformational piece, because that's not something that I can control.
Which perfectly tees up where I'm going to go. Patience. You need patience if you're going to nurture something.
Yep.
You're nurturing something because it needs help growing. And on Father's Day, I think it's a perfect time for me to lean into that word nurture, because when you hear it in the context of parenting, we always attribute the nurturing to the mom.
Facts. Very true.
And I want to say to any dad that's listening, we need to embrace that nurturing piece. They need to feel that nurturing coming from us as well. It may look, feel, sound a little different than when it's coming from mom, but your children definitely need to feel a nurturing essence coming through your fathering.
Wow.
And that's where I'm going to land it.
Wow. Powerful. Love it. Great call, guys. Really, really respect and appreciate being on the part of a team with other like-minded individuals that we can stretch and help each other nurture our children better.
For sure. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you tuning in again. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Take care. Love you, brothers. Happy Father's Day.
Same to you guys.
Peace.